And welcome once again to another edition of the Truth Hour. My name is Johnny Guzman. It's a pleasure to be here on this Monday, the 7th, 2012. Well, tonight's topic, karma and homosexuality. These two topics that perhaps may be, in this day and age, taboo to speak about. Why karma? Well, I personally don't believe in karma, but I do understand that we do come from other lives, and we have other lives prior to this one. But I don't buy the whole deal that we have to suffer because of what we did in our past actions, because we have the choice to correct anything that we did in another life or in this life, for that matter. You know, I'm sure I did some bad stuff when I was a teenager, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to do it now. So, in other words, because whatever I did back when I was a teenager, that doesn't mean that my karma today is to suffer. Of course not. And the other topic, homosexuality. What is going on with homosexuality? And for that, we have asked our good friend Santos Bonacci to come and join us tonight for another in-depth look at these two topics. Welcome, Santos.
Hi, Johnny.
Santos, let's start first with this topic of karma. I just mentioned that, personally, I don't buy the whole notion. I do understand there's cause and effect, right? I call it the boomerang effect. If you throw it, it's going to come back at you with force. If you throw something evil, bad, it's going to come back at you. But the whole notion of karma, for example, that the Hindus teach is that, well, you in your past life, you were a slave. Therefore, you'll always be a slave, and your karma, must be in the low castes. Or therefore you committed a crime in your last life and you have to pay. So in this lifetime, you're going to go to jail. So I don't buy that concept of karma. I'll tell you this. I was taking a course with Deepak Chopra in Carlsbad, California. This is back in 2005. And I had this question on my mind, and I wanted to ask him. So I finally was able to ask him. I says, Dr. Chopra, I says, I have a question. The Tibetan monks in the Tibet, there was so much knowledge, so much wealth. I mean, these guys could disappear. These guys could sleep next to a mountain and not shiver, because they would train for this special what do you call exercises called tahumo, that they couldn't feel any cold. They can focus and turn their brain on in compassion and love and neutralize energies. I mean, these guys could do a lot of things. Why weren't they able to predict or see that the Chinese were coming or do something about it? I don't know, put an energetic field around the Tibet and prevent the Chinese to invade. And his answer was, well, it was their karma. And it just didn't satisfy me, Santos. It was just sort of like, well, it's tough luck. This is what it is. It's just karma. They had to go through that experience. They had to suffer for whatever they did in their past lives. Now, I'm not criticizing Dr. Chopra. I think he's a fantastic man. He's done a lot of good, but was not satisfied with that answer. So I want to hear, Santos, what is your take on this topic of karma? Santos.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say that in the West, in the Western school of Kabbalah and Egyptian Hermeticism, which is the foundation of all the schools in Europe, the Druidic, the Christian, the Jewish, the Sufi traditions, all the traditions, all of them come from Hermes and Kabbalah. They have a very, very different view of karma. And the Eastern one, according to Thomas H. Burgoyne, this is one of the books that I'm always recommending daily and on all of my videos. It explains, there's a chapter on karma, and I would recommend people to read that chapter. In fact, everything in this book, everything, it's just a gem. Anything that Thomas H. Burgoyne writes. And he attacked the Eastern Buddhistic view of karma because, according to him, they had fallen into a state of ignorance about their very own teachings, you see, which they should never have done. You've heard of Jacob's ladder, you see, angels going down, angels going up. You can apply that to as above, so below. There are ones on this planet who are going down in their evolution because they're making very, very erroneous decisions in their life to choose material entanglements, to choose to hurt other people, and they are making the wrong decisions. Therefore, in their next life, if they don't repent, and this is not churchy at all, this has got nothing to do with churches, this is science. If they don't repent, they will lose the vibration of the atoms of their soul and their spirit, which are subtle atoms which we have carried with us through all of our incarnations. That's the extent of karma that we get. But of course, you and I, Johnny, it's probable that we've been on the ascent and growing our atoms and advancing in each life that we get given, because here we are now at the point where we love truth and light, and we want to go forward, we want to ascend, we want to do all the good things. We've turned our backs, obviously, on the negative and the fear and the materialism and all that filth out there in the world. And so we're headed in a certain direction. That's clear. There's no doubt about that. And so we are growing the vibration of our atoms, you see? And we have all of these, we've got gross atoms and subtle atoms. The gross ones appear physically, you see, and these bodies grow old and decay, and then we die. Whereas the spiritual and the soul's atoms, these are the ones that we are holding together by our virtues and personality and growing the thickness of our soul, you see. So our next life will be more glorious, hopefully. So that's the extent of karma. It's about the true causal evolution that we are going through. And so karma is not this linear thing that we have to, work out through lives, many lives, according to Thomas H. Burgoyne. So he attacks the Eastern view, where they claim that that's what karma is. And you are here now to work out past life karma. It's not, that's a half truth. That's not exactly true, There's some karma in there, but that's not what it's all about, We are here to remember. That's what lifetimes are all about, to remember the beautiful condition that we once had when we were unconditioned consciousness. Being in bodies represents conditions. In fact, 7 conditions according to the 7 chakras. And so those conditions we need to undo and work out, and we need to grow and turn those virtues into vices as we ascend the oil up the spinal cord to reach the optic thalamus, And then what happens after that is enlightenment. And of course, the churches don't want you to know that this is the true process of enlightenment. They want you to think that salvation occurs by a certain vicarious redeemer that's coming in the clouds one day. That day ain't never going to come. And so as for the teaching of karma, we need to be very, very careful that we don't get too wrapped up in the negative teachings, erroneous teachings about it, and that we get swept up with this thought that we need to work out some karma
It's the same.
Sure.
It's almost the same idea that the Christians or the Catholic Church instills in every newborn. That you're born with natural sin, so therefore you're
Yeah.
condemned right off the bat. So right off the bat, we come in with karma. It's a
Yeah.
different philosophy, and I mentioned this about the Hindu philosophy because they have levels of castes, and the lower castes, they're condemned to that, and they'll never be able to reach the higher caste, or maybe in, I don't know, 1,000 lifetimes. But don't we have the ability? I mean, I have the choice right now, Santos, to forget about my past. I mean, to begin with, there is no past because there's only the present moment, correct? There's no future. Our future is determined of whatever our present is. So how can I not have the choice to say, well, I've done some bad things, let's say, in this lifetime, but I no longer choose to do that, and I won't do it. So I have that free will, call it whatever, to stop that or to cut that and continue on a different vibration or whatever you want to call it. So that's, I think, the point of this karma issue, that many people, especially the new age, get so wrapped up in this karmic debt, as you said it before, that what it's doing is just continuing to enslave people in a different form. Santos.
Yeah, yeah, I would be tending to just be responsible in this lifetime and just make the right decisions, a wise man rules his stars. If you've come into this world with a bad birth chart with a lot of bad aspects, you know, you might be, I don't know, you might have a grand cross in your birth chart or something like that. You might have a lot of illnesses and a lot of traumas in this life. That's a decision that you've made to incarnate at that particular time. So a man or a woman who is wise will rule those stars in the sense that they are not being ruled by all of these, unconscious forces, um, like karma and the stars, etc. Well, they're not unconscious, but we don't want to be ruled by them. You get cut off on your way to work by a sloppy driver, and you curse, and then he's cursing you back, and then all of a sudden it looks like he wants to kill you on the road, and it destroys your day at work, and all because you decided to retaliate because this idiot, got in your way. So it's those little decisions. If we're ruled by love and everything like that, we won't be distracted by those things, and we will choose to forgive that person and move on, move forward, and then we can actually rule our stars. We can rule our situations rather than let them rule us. Because these things are going to happen on a daily basis. Negative things, stuff falling on your head, you trip over and fall over, your computer crashes. All these things are out of your control. It's not about karma. These are just daily things. And it's the way we deal with them. We've all got a certain amount of problems. Everybody has. The rich, the poor, they've all got problems to deal with. It's how you deal with them. And that can determine the outcome for the day and the next day. When you go to sleep, for instance, if you're scratching your head, worrying about everything, well, the next day you're going to wake up with the same vibration. You're not going to wake up positive and all new and refreshed because you've taken all the shit to bed to sleep with you. So if you go to bed and you cleanse yourself of all your negative thoughts, then you've got a chance of being more positive in the next morning. So you can rule all of this. You can rule this, and the wise man does this. You see, people who succeed, who truly succeed, I'm not talking about people who get really, really filthy rich. That's not success. That's only one level of success, and it's a very, very base and low level of success. Success is the whole, everything, spiritual, soul, psychic, astral, causal, the whole lot, as above, so below. So the true person, the true man or woman who succeeds is the one who makes the right choices during the day and doesn't let that karma crap rule his life.
Mhm. Santos, so in the Hermetic studies that you have researched so much, take me step by step. Okay, I'm clear that there is other lifetime, other lives, right? I mean, I can't ignore that. I mean, I can't believe that this is my only life. Okay, but you die, the body dies, the material dies. So what's left? Information recorded within your soul, your spirit, your cells, your molecules. And where does that information go? And how does it travel back to incarnate again into this plane with that information that some would call it karma or purpose or whatever it is? What does the Hermetic studies say about this?
Well, those atoms survive the physical death of the human organism, those soul and spirit. That's why it's very careful in Hermetic science to look after the soul, because you can lose your soul. You can, when you're disincarnate and you don't have a fleshly body anymore, there's an amount of strength, soul strength, and electric force that survives, and it stays with you, with your individuality. And if that soul is weak, you see, because you've lived a weak life morally, you haven't made the right choices, you've stolen from people, you've told lies, you've hurt other people, what's happening is your soul is fragmenting. It can't. There's only one way of evolution, and that is to have integrity, and have virtue, and to ascend whilst you're alive. You don't have any chance of ascending after you're dead. You've got to do that in incarnation. You must be doing that when you're incarnated. You're growing, because in between lives there's no growth. And so if the soul has that integrity, and it has that goodness and that love, it carries over. And those atoms then are seeking, those orbs that you see floating around. People take photos of them, and you see all these beautiful orbs, especially when there's, around temples and around holy places and around good people. There's always these protective orbs. They're pretty much like that. They are just a bunch of atoms of individuality, of an entity. And they're similar to that, you see, and they go looking to either incarnate or to lose incarnation and rise above and go to the higher levels, you see, because we inherit the subtle bodies that are above our crown chakra. There's more chakras above, you see. There's hundreds of them, and it goes forever, or not forever, but it goes back to cause. And we're going to inherit those on Jacob's ladder one day, eventually. But if we get distracted by Rome's world that gives us jobs instead of work, that gives us treatment for our diseases instead of cures, you see, you can make a choice. You can go to a doctor who's working for Big Pharma, and you can take Prozac and all of that shit that he recommends, and you're going to destroy your body. You actually are. That's why it's so dangerous to put chemicals in your body. You can heal yourself or cure yourself with herbs. Lemon juice in water every day. Warm water, unfluoridated water, distilled water, clean water. You put that in your body and it just leaches all of the inorganic minerals. You see, that's why they say on the internet, oh, don't drink distilled water, it leaches minerals. But they don't qualify that because they love dealing in half-truths. It leaches inorganic minerals and leaves the organic ones which are useful for the human organism. So they won't tell you that, and they want you to go to the tap and drink fluoridated water because they care for your teeth. The amount of crime being perpetrated against our souls and spirits, because they know that the Vatican and the cardinals at the Vatican, they know they're poisonous magic and how it works, and they get poisoned to go out through the airwaves, and they get poisoned to go out through the psychic waves and through the physical mediums, because they give you chemtrails, fluoride, they give you aspartame, Prozac, and all of that shit, which actually destroys not only your body, but also your soul. Be careful not to use your soul. Do not lose your soul, because as Jesus says, for they can kill your body, but they cannot destroy your soul if you have a soul of integrity. And if you practice the science of raising the oil, you've only got a certain amount of oil that comes from the cerebrum, the pia mater, the claustrum. At the top of the head, there's a fluid that pours down the spinal cord. And then if you return it so that it returns to the optic thalamus, then all the dormant brain cells awaken and you become and inherit your kingdom, you see. But everything out there in the big bad world is designed to stop that oil from going up. They tell you, you see, the little kids who watch MTV, they're told to go and discharge their sexual energy because there's a bunch of booty on MTV, and ooh, and I feel sexy. I'm going to go and get me some girl now and see if I can't discharge this beautiful sexual energy. Well, the sexual energy is the most powerful energy in the universe. It's the Holy Spirit. It's electric. It's magnetic. It's chi. It's prana. It's ki. It's the Holy Spirit, the Holy Dove. And you're going to go and discharge it because you feel sexy? Well, that's what they teach you in the world, you see. And even in church. In church, they tell you that it's really, really bad. And don't you masturbate. And rather than teaching people, you know, you can enjoy this beautiful gift of sexuality, but just look after the oil. Because if you waste it, it's not going to return back to the where it came from, and you'll never reactivate those dormant brain cells.
Right. Santos, why can't we remember when we incarnate in this lifetime? Obviously, if we could remember, I would suggest that we wouldn't commit the same stupidities, or we would remember some of the things that we done, good or bad. But why is it that we can't remember once we incarnate in this life?
Some people do remember, and you can have partial memory by simply just looking at your birth chart. So you put in the date, you go to a website that deals with astrology, and you can do a free birth chart, and you can see where all the planets are lined up, and these tell you a little bit about your past lives. And you can do this. So you can partially reclaim some of that memory, but it's advantageous not to have full memory, because otherwise, you're not going to work out some of the things that you need to work out in this particular life. Sometimes it's a disadvantage to remember your past lives because you get lazy and you sit on your laurels and you don't do the good work that you're supposed to come and do. And this is why the Vatican gets children before the age of 7. They like to tell you that if you can bring a child before the age of 7 to us, we can set them for the rest of their lives so that they are programmed. They are so programmable. And this is why we need to free ourselves from opinions, education, beliefs, and go into the new way of living, which is consciousness, higher consciousness. But we can only do that with the good practices, you see. So remembering everything about our past lives is actually a disadvantage. It can make you lazy.
So to conclude on this topic, so we can move on to the next one, Santos. So it is that we become addicted. We become addicted. Let's say a good old Catholic boy becomes so addicted to his faith that he dies as a Catholic boy. He leaves the body, returns back into another incarnation. He's still addicted to those emotions, to those patterns that he continues on that same ladder, Santos. So it's an emotional addiction, or is it just the way it is? And this is going to lead me into the next topic, which is homosexuality, because we're seeing, at least here, close to where I live, it's I don't want to use the word epidemic because it sounds bad, but in the broader sense, a lot. There's been a lot of people just showing their homosexuality, both male and female, which is something that was very, very taboo or minimal here, especially in the South American countries, unlike in the States or in Australia or in Europe, where San Francisco is the capital of the gays, but down here we're seeing a huge amount of kids, young kids, 14, 15 years old, already declaring themselves that they're homosexuals. So this is why I ask you then, is it an emotional attachment, an addiction to that past life that you weren't able to resolve those issues and now you come back again to continue? If that's the case, then is homosexuality then an addiction that you weren't able to resolve in your previous life, Santos?
Well, look, in the Bible, homosexuals were called eunuchs. And they were given special jobs, you see. Eunuchs were born that way. Now, they were given special jobs because they could be trusted, for instance, with looking after the queen or women of noble birth. The men would the kings or their husbands would be able to leave the eunuchs with their, they could travel abroad and leave the queen behind with the eunuchs looking after it because they had no sexual desire for women, you see. So a eunuch was useful. But homosexuals have the same responsibility as straight people to look after the oil. Just because they're homosexual just doesn't mean that they can just go squandering the oil, and there are repercussions for that. They need also to be careful in their sexual practices. We all do. It's a gift, but it's also a double-edged sword, and it can destroy you. In particular, if all you're thinking about is just wasting the seed and having orgasms. I would recommend that people really just have a look at tantric sex and learn how to not have the orgasm. And I'd be watching this ASAP. You can buy that on Amazon. This is a great video. The Secret Garden to Eden. Sex, Secret Garden to Eden, and it's called Alchemy, Tantra, and Kabbalah in the Mysteries of Adam and Eve. This is not what you expect, what you're thinking. This is the true science. These guys are teaching it, and they advocate no orgasm. You can have wonderful sex without having an orgasm. Oh, I don't know whether it's a trillion times better or a gazillion times better, but it is definitely way, way better to practice tantric sex than just to have 10 minutes of fleshly, lustful sex and just blow your juices. Those are the juices that come from the brain. All you're doing is you're just emptying your brain, and you're never going to bring the oil back up so that your brain can be recharged and reactivate those dormant brain cells. That's your brain. It's your brain you're losing.
Santos, but why are we seeing such a huge amount of homosexuals today? Why is that?
Well, these people who are in the middle, they're genderless. Women.
What do you mean they're genderless? What do you mean genderless? I mean,
well,
I see a boy. I mean, he looks like a kid or a man.
But that's just the physical body. Inside, they are neither masculine or feminine. You see, These nature dishes these up, and they don't, have a sexual attraction to their own kind. They have a sexual attraction, to the opposite. They have a sexual attraction to their own kind. That's because they're born that way. That's their evolution. If only they could look after their sexual practices, they would be able to advance just like anybody else. But the problem is they fall into lust like everybody else. It's lust, lust, lust. Everywhere you look, it's lust, lust, lust. And there's no control over the sexual organism. So they are being born this way, my friend. And they're in the middle, you see. They're in the middle of the two extremities because, after all, what is masculinity at one end of the polarity and femininity at the other end of the polarity? And can there not be anything in between? Must we all be 100% totally masculine like the churches want us to believe is the case? And 100% totally feminine just because you've inherited a masculine or a feminine body. Sex is not about that. It's about the science underlying it to raise the oil. You see, regardless of what your sexual preference is in terms of gender.
Right, but you're bringing forth that information, though, I guess, from a past life. So, but what caused that? Is it that you were okay? So, if you're a man now, you're a homosexual man. So then, does that mean that you were a female that perhaps was raped by her father, and in the moment she didn't get over that emotional distraught, and now when she incarnates in this lifetime, she doesn't want to incarnate as a woman because obviously she still carries that memory. So she decides to incarnate in a man. I mean, I don't know if this is logical or not, but still carries the information of being a woman. So is a woman trapped in a man's body, and obviously she is going to be attracted to another man because her information is that of a woman in a man's body. So that's my question. I mean, is that information also being brought, or is just, well, it's sort of like it was you turned out to be a homosexual or a lesbian or whatever, or is that also information that's caused by something in your past life?
Partially, yes. Yeah, it's part of that, and but it's also part of the experience that one needs in order to work out whatever it is that these twin spirits or twin transgender twin spirits have inherited. It's they need to look within and do their meditating and look within and ask themselves what it means. I mean, in this life, I'm 100% heterosexual. I'm purely attracted to the opposite gender. Not that I don't see beauty in the masculine form. It's a beautiful body that a man has, but sexually I'm not attracted to it. So I'm going to have to work with that because I can't change that in this life, and I'm not going to. I don't want to. I don't need to. I don't need to say, well, I better experiment with homosexuality so that I can, see what's there and how it works and everything. I don't. I've got this life as a heterosexual, and I need to work out whatever it means for me. And I've discovered what it means. I mean, I've lived a whole 49 years not knowing the science of ascension, just having discovered it, in the last year or so. Or let's say, well, I started practicing tantric sex, good 3 years ago when I, first got into stuff like this. But now I'm much more careful about my sexual practices because I know that every month there is that beautiful seed born in the solar plexus. And if we don't squander the seed, we can actually help raise that Kundalini energy up to the pineal gland. So I'm just advocating to all people, whether they are lesbian or gay or heterosexual, whatever, transgender, just be mindful of what sex means to you, and use it as a transmutative energy rather than something to fulfill your lustful addictions. Because lustful addictions, all the pleasure that you get from sex, that's also pain. It's not necessary. We enjoy it at the time, but there is wormwood in there. There is bitterness in everything that we do that gives us pleasure is also has the other side of the coin, which is pain. And that's what we get in the material world. So always remember that when you go after that pleasure, that lustful pleasure, there's always a scorpion bite in the end. Every rose has a thorn, and that beautiful smell of the rose. You can also prick yourself on that stem of the rose. And that's the same with everything. Everything is a double-edged sword. But when we decide that we're going to be Saint George and we're going to slay the dragon lives down here. Everything evil, the Philistines, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, go and kill those Philistines when you go into the promised land. That's just the lower nature. That's just the stories about how we conquer the lower nature. Homosexual, heterosexual alike needs to conquer the lower nature. If we don't do that, it will be detrimental and we will have to work it out in other lives.
So Santos, so is homosexuality natural? It's not natural? Is it karma? Is it emotional addictions from not resolved from another lifetime? I mean, we kind of have a kind of a negative look at homosexuality because we see somehow our psychic associates the pedophiles, right? Especially in the Catholic Church, how they abuse children and obviously they like boys. So we say, well, they're homosexuals. Maybe not. Maybe they just have this sick mind that they like children. But is it natural? What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, nature served them up. I didn't, it is natural. Some trees grow straight and tall. Some trees grow like this. Some trees, don't produce seed. Some trees produce a lot of fruit. And that's what nature does. Nature dishes them up. But at the same time, it doesn't mean you might have homosexual inclinations. It doesn't mean you have to go and sexually fulfill that desire. And if you so choose to do so, there is still a warning there that this is a powerful alchemical process, sexuality, whereby you can either stifle your progress and destroy it, or you can make something of it. So I would suggest to anyone that's homosexual that they look into that and meditate and go within and realize that they also have to be very, very responsible. All this, the Mardi Gras where they dress half naked and dress in a very, very lustful manner and everything like that, that's going a bit over the top because that is promoting, the lust side of it, rather than showing that they are unique in that they were born in the middle, rather than showing that in a tasteful way and in a way that promotes more understanding in the community towards these types or these people. I shouldn't say types as though, they're a freak. Nature serves them up, so it is natural. It's nature that's doing it. That's natural. Okay. It's not unnatural.
So Santos, in this situation that the Catholic Church faces, right, with the homosexuality and the pedophiles and all this, how is it then that we can avoid thinking that this is not natural? I mean, they teach us as if this is not natural, right? In the meantime, we're bombarded all over from every different angle that, sexual sex and sex and more sex. And now, everything is just pretty much out in the open. So how does their distorted teaching affect us as well with the homosexuality topic?
Well, some of it is unnatural because they've been abused and they've been taught to repay the abuse. You see, these priests who are pedophiles, and they usually tend to go for little boys, not little girls, they are actually churning out homosexuals that never really did have that bisexual inclination in the first place. So it's like a little factory where they churn them out. That's unnatural. And because they've inflicted their choice and their lust and their way of living on some unsuspecting child, and those children sometimes grow up committing suicide because they're not comfortable with their homosexual practices in the end, because they learnt this behavior by having it inflicted on them. That's unnatural. And that needs to be dealt with in society, and we will deal with that. But as for the ones born in the middle, these are our brothers, and they are suffering because they're not being understood by this really polarized world where everything is masculine and feminine. Nature doesn't do that. Nature provides masculinity and femininity to reproduce so that we can keep reproducing our species. But not everybody is totally masculine or totally feminine. They are born that way. And these are free spirits. These are transgender creatures, and their destiny is their destiny, and it's separate and different path to polarized genders. And we all need to work out our own destiny with knowledge. That's why this information that I'm sharing, this Hermetic wisdom, is so crucial and so important, and why I'm always they're available to be able to get it out on the airwaves and get it out, because there's a lot of bad information by people who have no idea, just spreading their own opinions, especially churchgoers. No idea with the vomit that they repeat. They're just repeaters, and they've been taught to repeat rubbish and wrong stuff and condemn these twin spirits rather than extend love to them and understanding.
Santos, I guess it's tougher for men homosexuals because I would say because of all the influence, the external influence that men are macho, and they, you need to have more women, and the more women you have sex with, the macho you are. That when two men get together, they still have that information being in a man's body that to be a little bit more promiscuous. So two men being together, they're gonna, by nature, I don't know. I would suggest that it's a lot harder for two homosexuals because they're gonna always be thinking, can I be with another person, because of that natural man instinct, that as opposed to two women. What would you say to that?
I'm not really sure I understood the question properly, but the responsibility is to both genders, of course, If they're going to practice sexuality that's really degraded and lustful and everything like that, well, that's only going to hurt them. That hurts everybody. Because it's a double-edged sword, and it's a waste of the beautiful spirit energy that comes to us from the cerebrum, and that needs to be nurtured. That's the good oil that we have to keep and preserve. That's the salt. Salt gives us the word salvation. We need to save ourselves.
It was suggested, Santos, as well, that the Pentagon was working on some type of chemical. Some people were calling it the gay bomb, right? That they would that would put some kind of chemical within their bombs that would confuse the enemy and make them have change their hormones. In effect, change the way they feel about battle. And they called it a love bomb or the gay bomb, because obviously the guys who are fighting in the army are mostly men. So I bring you this question because all the hormones in our food, all the hormones in the chicken. You see little girls today that are 13 years old, they look like 20-year-old girls, women, that they're so developed and their breasts are huge and they look like grown women. And same thing with boys. So could it be as well that some chemicals or these thugs that are poisoning us are also sticking chemicals that are changing the hormones in people and are making them sort of switch from being heterosexuals to homosexuals? Santos, have you heard about anything about this?
Oh yeah, I think they're doing that. I really do. Yeah, and that is unnatural and unforgivable to change people's sexual inclination for purposes of harvesting their energy. And they do encourage a culture of homosexuality in the army, in the navy, etc. They don't discourage it; they encourage it, and they're doing it deliberately. And how they do that is they officially display concern about homosexuality within their ranks, but inwardly they do a lot of things to promote it, yeah, and that is not good, and they're doing that, and that is a fact, and that's unnatural because it's changing their inclination and making men and women lustful when they don't need to be.
Okay, Santos, excellent. So, to wrap this up, karma could be information that we bring from past lives, but certainly we can break that karma by understanding who we are, understanding that we don't need to be enslaved by our past in this life or in any other life. As long as you mentioned, we focus our energy on love, on treating people good, on developing our own intuition, avoiding eating things and drinking things that are just damaging our physical body, because as you said, it damages the soul, and this is what we don't want to do when we physically die. And homosexuality is a natural thing that just nature has decided to bring forth, and there is a possibility that homosexuality has implications that is being created by these animals in the Pentagon and in these other places that are injecting chemicals in the food, in the water, in the vaccines that they give, as you said, the soldiers to promote the homosexuality. Karma and homosexuality. Santos Bonacci, thank you once again for being here with us. I will see you on Wednesday for our Spanish Truth Hour. Thank you, Santos.
Thank you.
Well, that's going to do it for us, friends. Thank you for being here another hour with us. We'd like to remind you to go into our webpage to see us live, www.qlpmultimedia.com. Also, you can see us live in Facebook. Send us your invitations at QLP Multimedia. And of course, for all of our previous shows, go to our YouTube channel, QL Television. Thank you very much for being here with us. We'll see you tomorrow for our Spanish Truth Hour. Ciao.